reading this morning is taken from Matthew, chapter 15, verses 1 to 16. Now when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them. He said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. This is the word of the Lord.
Hi everyone, how you doing? Oh, I can't hear myself. I just spent, up until last Tuesday, 3 weeks in the UK, in England, on a independent schools Queensland study tour, looking at some Christian schools and all that sort of stuff, and that was absolutely amazing. It was actually amazing to be there when the Kangaroos won the first test as well, because you just put it to everybody I met in the street, and I woke up this morning and found out we did the same again, so that's so I picked up a bit of a cold. Wasn't through screaming too much, but anyway, it's great to be home. And it's a real privilege to be able to talk to you this morning about mission, and particularly about Medical Santo. I want to tell you the story about Medical Santo first, and then I want to sort of share a few thoughts about mission in general. You can see up on the screen there, right in the middle of that big piece of ocean is Vanuatu, and most of you all know that. Vanuatu is a long Y-shaped country. The part where we're concerned with in Medical Santo, in Vanuatu, is the top half of that, the Y bit in essentially in the top half of the Y. And over on the left-hand side, I know it's small, but I wanted to give you the scope of where we are in Brisbane here, right over to Fiji, New Caledonia, and we're smack bang in the middle. Medical Santo is a registered charity in Vanuatu. It provides primary health care through a general purpose clinic in a place called Luganville. And I'll show you a bit closer up view of that in a minute. Luganville is the old name. Generally these days, because it's on the island of Espiritu Santo, it's just known as Santo. So if you get on a plane in Brisbane and go to Santo, you go to Santo, you don't go to Luganville. The clinic was set up back in 2011, and I'll tell you more about that, to provide general practice, to set up a general practice clinic to serve the population, and as a base for remote sites into Espiritu Santo and to the remote islands for remote visits. The mission was started by members of Churches of Christ in Queensland in Vanuatu, but importantly is not affiliated officially with those organisations. But through the years, those organisations have supported and certainly prayed and provided all sorts of help along the way. And I won't go into the reasons why, but because of everything from the political structure in Vanuatu through to a number of other things, the name of the charity is Churches of Christ Medical Santo. These days it's just been shortened to Medical Santo. Now we're recognised and part of the community. The success of what I say here is there's an amazing connection that you have to realise. It's my brain, my ability to read, my notes, and my skillful negotiation of the technology involved. So if it goes awry, it's probably my fault, one way or the other. So that's where Vanuatu is. If we click on that, whoops, no, now I've got to go back already. We went too far. That's the island of Espiritu Santo. Down in the, as you look at it, down in the right-hand corner, if you're good, you can see Luganville in that little bunch of islands that sticks out on the bottom right-hand corner. There's a road that runs up the east coast, almost up to the top little part there of the big saddle, and only about a quarter of the way around on the western side. Everywhere else on the island, you have to get by boat. Out in the middle of that island is very mountainous and rugged. There are bushmen that live up there that you still see around town who basically wear nothing but a belt with a piece of material that sort of comes up, over, around and through and back and up and over. And they still believe there are villages up there that no one has ever, Europeans have ever seen. Espiritu Santo is interesting because it was there that the Americans built a big naval base during the war. They built the airstrip, and over on the right, the big piece of green is an island called Umbai. Now, as I'll talk later, when we went there as missionaries in 2019, that's the island we were on, right there. James Michener wrote a story called South Pacific, which you most know, and he had an island called Ballyhigh. Well, that was what he could see from Espiritu Santo, where he was during the war, and called it Ballyhigh. Let me tell you, it's nothing like Ballyhigh at all. It's a volcano with black dirt around it, whatever. But nevertheless, he never went there. So just going on, this is the town of Luganville. And if you take the very centre of that picture and just right in the middle, just above the blue bit, which is the canal, that's where Medical Santo is, right in the centre of that picture. The main street of Santo looks very similar to developing country main streets. It's got one street running down and traders, a lot of Chinese merchants on either side of the road. Any of you who've been to Santo, of course, you will know that. I'm only telling this just to put a bit of context around it. The history. Churches of Christ in Australia have had a history with medical services in Vanuatu for over 100 years. That came about because in 1902, a number of Kanakas who had come to Bundaberg Childers area to cut cane and had gone to local churches, become Christians, and were so blessed by all of that they went back to Pentecost Island, which is one of the ones on the right of Espiritu Santo, one of those small islands, and set up churches. It wasn't missionaries went there initially, it was actually Ni Vanuatu people who went back from the Bundaberg area. And because of the connection back to Churches of Christ in Australia, from that time right through until 1980, when independence came, churches played a big role in providing medical services. On the island where we were, at a place called Dooandooey, there was a full hospital with operating theatre, X-ray machine and so on. Unfortunately, after 1980, when independence came, the government discovered, despite an awful lot of trying, that there just was not the funds or the money to keep it going, and it all fell into disrepair. And so when we turned up in 1992, and the whole island where we were, in fact, in none of those islands around there was there any medical presence at all, other than some small aid clinics with possibly trained nurses. It was a bit frightening. It was a bit confronting as well, because there were people that we met and people that we were able to minister to while we were there that were dying for simple things that you and I just would never dream would cause our death. Asthma attacks that caused death were very numerous. And fortunately, because Tim, our son, and Joy had bad asthma, our doctor had fixed us up with all the kit and caboodle and would very often send us things like Ventolin. And I can remember 3 o'clock in the morning getting in the school truck and driving up the mountain to a village because somebody had come down and said an old lady had short wind and was close to death. But fortunately, with a bit of a nebulizer and whatever else, sometimes we were able to pull these people through. And I only tell you that, not to exaggerate it, but just to say there were the sort of conditions that existed around that northern area of Vanuatu, certainly when we got there. Move forward to 2011. 2011, the government said, this is all a real big issue. We're not making any headway. Let's invite the churches and all those people who did it so well back into the mix to see what can happen. Okay, pause there. Hold that. In 1992, a family from this church set out with a calling to go to Vanuatu to be missionaries on Umbai. Any resemblance between the guy there and me is purely coincidental. We discovered at that time, as I said, that there's just a desperate need for medical services. But at that time it wasn't our job. We went there to a training school that had been set up by Churches of Christ in Vanuatu to help with the training and education of some of the young people. While we were there, a guy called Alan Cox and his wife, Lynn, from Buderim in Queensland, came over to help to do another project on Santo. Came across to help us, and our friendship started. And later on, between then and 2011, they went back to Umbai many times. I'm just going to quickly show you the next photo. It's probably a distance away. Now, you'll have to excuse me. This is sort of a private joke. It'll only mean something to a few people. I hope the rest of you get it. We had this brilliant idea before we went that we were going to steal something from some of our close friends and take it with us. And then every time we took a photo of ourselves in the mission field, we'd include those items and send it back. And the message that we eventually wanted to send them was, well, if you want your stuff back, you've got to come over and visit us. Now, that was a grand plan. Now, the reality is that, I'll tell you, the white basket there belonged to the beds. And Jeanette had a plant in it. And I think it was Sarah, her daughter, that twigged it. Oh, that's our thing that went missing. So did the people who had the owl. Now, we had a great friend, and for protecting her or my integrity, she will only be known, and those who know her will know who I'm talking about, whose name was Noodles. Nickname was Noodles. And in Noodles' family, everyone but her knew that we'd taken something from her house. The story goes that probably a year, 18 months after it happened, there was a discussion going on about what the Weatheralls had done, and Noodles said, hey, all these pictures I've been getting, I wondered why there was a doormat in the picture. Of course, it was her doormat. But anyone who knew Noodles would know what that story is all about. That's got nothing to do with what I want to talk about. I just thought it might be interesting. I came across that as I was searching for some photos to show you. 2011, Alan Cox, who I met, ourselves, a couple, David and Robin Ellaby, and Keith and Annette Wilson from Vanuatu got together because we felt an absolute overwhelming call from God that something had to be done about the medical situation. We had no idea what it was. But we, after much prayer and consideration over a number of months, we just realised that God was calling us to commit to do whatever it took to try and come up with some sort of solution for the situation. So Alan and Lynn went over in early 2011 and had 26 meetings with government officials, church leaders who were pushing for it to happen, and the communities, and came back with this overwhelming sense that the need was far greater than we had imagined. And so we got together, we talked to people, and people donated and supported us, and in the end we were able to purchase this house. Now, it's one of the very, very, very better houses in Santo, but it was big enough, we thought, to house a clinic and to do what happened. It wasn't properly suited. It had a lot of problems, which is why the people were selling it, but we thought we could do something with this. And God made provision for that. Churches of Christ in Queensland loaned us the money without interest so that we could actually purchase. And just to jump forward a little bit, eventually the board of Churches of Christ in Queensland agreed that we should be able to purchase this for a very small amount of money, which was affect the book value that it had after many, many years. After a deal of work and mission trips, wherever, Medical Santo came into being in 2013. You can see we've built in the bottom part, which made a reception room. Upstairs we kept for accommodation for visitors and built clinic rooms in there. We invited Dean Phelan, who was the CEO of Church of Christ in Queensland, to come over, and it was opened in May 2013. We were underway. It got going. And we just marvelled at how God was leading us and providing what we needed. It was amazing. See, the reality is, and I just, if I could just point out this, Dave Ellaby, one of the original team who joined with us to make it, was a paramedic. He was a care flight paramedic and a very senior one, worked up on the Sunshine Coast. Now, he was the only one out of the team to do anything medical at all. The rest of us hadn't got a clue what we were doing, and I really mean that. But slowly but surely, through God's wonderful grace and his leading, the right people turned up at the right time who could guide us and tell us what we needed to do. A doctor in Sydney that came to visit agreed to be our senior medical person, and she still today signs off on all of the prescription medicines that we need to buy from Australia and so on. Absolutely became dedicated to what we were trying to do. As I said, the rest of us had really no idea. So the idea of trusting God for stuff, it's easy to say, oh, well, I trust God. But many of you will know it's not until you're up against that brick wall with nowhere to go, nobody to ask, nothing else to do, that what trusting God really starts to mean to you. If you're on an island with no medical assistance, where the son has chronic asthma, and you're trusting God that he's not going to get sick, because there's nowhere to go. There's nobody to ring. You can't ring a friend. There's no telephones. There's a radio sked, if you're lucky, once a day on HF radio to somewhere else. And many of you will have appreciated that. So, by June 2014, in 1 year, the clinic had seen 1,356 patients at the clinic. 756 patients were assessed in local businesses and workplaces for age, weight, blood pressure and blood sugar checks. Education sessions were on the causes and symptoms of non-communicable diseases, diabetes and all of those sorts of things. We'd had employed 3 local Ni Vanuatu staff, 16 volunteer doctors had been to the clinic, 7 volunteer medical specialists, 40 specialists, 42 volunteer nurses, 6 volunteer paramedics and 4 volunteer medical educators. Every single one of them provided by God. We didn't know who to talk to. The word of mouth just spread around. That first couple of years gave us reason to celebrate, but everywhere we turned, it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. The need got greater. Our ability to treat certain common diseases needed to expand. We needed pathology equipment, ultrasound equipment. We needed dental equipment and all sorts of things. But by 2022, despite all of those gradual things and the needs, the number of people that had visited the clinic, some on obviously coming back, but the number of consultations had gone over 60,000 people since 2013. Just as a quick side note, interestingly, I forgot to say, I was going to say, Joe, back in 1992, we had a toilet problem on the island. And I used to get every month, come through the Tier Fund Manual, which was a great booklet for mission people because it had devotions and a whole lot of information. And in the back of it, there was always practical projects, how to use your local materials to solve a problem. And guess what? One of them that we used was how to build a toilet. A flyless toilet, smellless toilet, out of local materials and so on. And it worked wonderfully, and we ended up building about 4 of them around the school. So thanks, Joe. I know you didn't do it then, but thanks anyway, in retrospect. Let's skip forward. Development continued, and today this is what our clinic looks like. At the side left is a recent building over the last 2 years, which houses upstairs a pathology section, a staff room for the staff, and down below an X-ray, new dental room, and so on. Around 2019, the amount of money that people were donating and wanting tax deductions became such that we had to start a charity in Australia. It's called Pacific Islands Health and Education Limited, fully registered charity with the ACNC so that we can give tax deductible things and so on. So you'll see reference to that. As of today, we've now seen over 90,000 patients. We have regular volunteer doctors and nurses, allied health professionals, people like physiotherapists and all of those sorts of people who come to volunteer for between 1 month and 2 years. We have a disability service which provides care and such things as wheelchairs and all of those sorts of things for people which they've never ever had. We now have approximately 10 paid staff, all local Ni Vanuatu people, and all the work is funded by donations. We actually charge expats who are working there a normal fee if they come for emergency to the clinic. And tourists who get sick, there's a whole lot of diving goes on off there, and people come with everything with the bends, and we have to arrange to ship them out with pressurised aircraft and all that sort of stuff, and we're able to charge a fee for that. And so that keeps us all going and helps us pay the local staff. I'll just run through a couple of pictures. I know that's very quick, but it does give you a bit of a history and sort of where we're at and how God, and I can't emphasise this enough, you sort of keep saying we're going to do this, we're doing this and we're doing that, but at every step, each one of those was a brick wall. We haven't got the room to do the sorts of things. We raised some money to get an X-ray machine. Where are we going to put the thing? And buildings, that building cost us probably close to $300,000, but God made provision for that. This is the building on the right-hand side of the old building, which we've just purchased. The old guy who lived there decided he wanted to go back to his home island. It was an absolute ramshackle place, but there's been a series of 2 so far mission working parties, and another group is going next Thursday to rebuild that, cut some of it down, and so we can turn that into further services. Inside, we have a reception area. This lady here joined us at the beginning. She was our first employee. She's our receptionist. Denny is her name. She's married. She's the most wonderful Christian woman you could ever want to meet. These are one of our emergency treatment rooms inside, and another one if people come in, and we also use them for dressings because tropical ulcers and all that sort of stuff are really need dressing regularly. Our dentist room, and this is the room that we've just put downstairs with a full X-ray set of equipment just in this last year. We had doctors from everywhere. There's a local Australian guy who came over for a number of time and was operating in the clinic. Doctors from Asia, from Europe, all volunteer their time to come and stay and to provide the medical services. Also, though, an important part of rural visits, some people can't come in to where the clinic is, so we send a team out, and very often it starts by just putting a sign up next to a tree and seeing who turns up. This lady here, Judith, a wonderful Christian lady, in the middle of COVID, she got serious pneumonia and was very close to death. She had to be intubated in the clinic, and people stayed with her for 24 hours. And after a long story and talking to ministers and people, she has a brother in in Toowoomba. Her father is a missionary doctor, been all over the world, and her mother is a nurse. They're in Vanuatu at the moment, working in the clinic. And through help of members of Parliament in the Toowoomba area and Lynn Cox's efforts here in Queensland, we finally were able to get an aircraft to fly from New Caledonia that was pressurised, get a doctor. And it was almost like, it wasn't exactly like, it was almost like the aircraft had to land in Brisbane Airport, take Judith out, push the trolley at one end of the runway, and then the Australian doctors could get it at the other, because of the rules just said, not only were our quarantine rules for COVID strict, that nobody was allowed to come in, if those doctors had got out and actually come onto Australian soil, they wouldn't have been allowed back into New Caledonia. So it all had to be done very specially. But she survived and took a couple of years off and is now back there working as the clinic supervisor again. Sometimes it's just in a hut out in a village. The doctor will go there and start consultations, and people get to word of mouth, and everybody turns up. This is a staff meeting. Our local staff and visiting doctors and nurses get together Friday morning. There's a prayer session, and then after they all discuss how the week's gone, and then they have lunch together. And this is the team saying hi to you all. This is the current team back when the new building was opened. I won't point out, there's a number of significant people there. So that's us. That's Medical Santo. If anybody knows anybody in any of the allied professions or whatever who thinks they might like to give up some of their holidays or some of their time and come over and volunteer, we'd love to talk to you and to welcome you with open arms. A number of people have been to Vanuatu. I'm grateful. Tony came with me on one work party, and other people have been to help, which is absolutely incredible. I want to, and I'm sorry that that's so quick, but obviously it's a big, big story to tell, and there are websites for Medical Santo, and if you're interested, you can go and have a look at a bit more of that sort of where we are. There is one more slide which I just wanted to highlight at this point, if I can get it to change. I'm extremely grateful for this church, for their support for Medical Santo. And one of the miracles that has happened over the years, power in Vanuatu is very flaky. It can go off for days and days and days, and so we decided we needed to go off-grid. That meant we needed one of these big boxes which has batteries and controllers and so on. We have a whole lot of solar on the roof, and we needed a new generator. So we started fundraising, and the first thing that happened is Ian and Neva Handy at the time, through their trust, gave us a lump of money. And I came and I talked to Ian Flood and was talking to him about it, and he said, well, write us a little note and we'll see what the mission committee could do. And honestly, I'm not exaggerating, we would have been grateful if the church could have afforded to give us $500 or whatever else, but we needed to get to $20,000 to pay for the generator alone and get it shipped over there. I think it was a Friday morning or one morning, Alan rang me up and he said, look, our church up here at Budrum normally gives us about $1,000 every year or so, and they've just come with a cheque of $5,000, so we're up to 15 with what Ian and Neva had put in from the trust. And that afternoon, I think it was, Ian rang me and said, look, we've met, and Rivers Church has given you $5,000. And there it was, the $20,000. Now, I think I'm honest in saying I didn't tell Ian or the mission committee we needed $5,000, but that's just the way in which God provides. I want to finish up, though, by actually sharing with you what I hope is some real encouragement in mission. Look, I want to tell you that I'm just so very grateful that we're part of such a strong missional church that we have here at Rivers. And it's so self-evident. You don't need me to tell you that, least of all. In addition to all the important activities that we as a church must do and are called to do through worship and prayer and the teaching, through leadership, our demonstrated commitment to practical discipleship and the work of meaningful mission both in our local community and overseas, is just such a great testimony to this being a church that takes what Jesus said seriously and acts upon it. Now, please believe, I'm not trying to patronise you or sort of try to make you feel good. I'm just stating what I believe to be truth. And I think as you look around what this church does, I don't think anyone could come up with anything other than that kind of result. We should all rejoice in this. But I do want us to remember that God is continually calling us to a deeper Christian engagement, collectively and individually, with those outside the church. Despite however much we're doing, there is always much more. In today's society, I think that again is obvious. For me, Christian mission, the mission of the church, is the dynamic outcome of being what Jesus said we were, salt and light. And I want you to note that Jesus didn't tell us that in a way that says we should be. He actually said that's what you are. You are salt and you are light. Being salt and light is a fundamental outcome of accepting Jesus as Saviour and Lord. We do that through God's amazing grace, and as we've looked at through the Acts over this last year and so on, we see how that results in the filling of the Spirit and the outworking of the Spirit in community, and amazing things start to happen. And that Holy Spirit is the very source of the salt and light that we become when we become a Christian. It's the very essence of the new creation. The old has passed away and the new has come, is how Paul put it. Now, what this means in everyday life is that we strive, or we should be striving, to embody, to make real, to live out and promote the characteristics of the kingdom of God. Those characteristics that Jesus called us to have. And to live in a way that Jesus showed us. We need to enable the salt and light that we are to have effect in the community through the proclamation of and the process of salvation. That's what we need to be doing. We need to live out practical values of love, justice, mercy, and service in our community, acting with patience and kindness, and certainly living as Christians with every bit of integrity that reflects the majesty of God. In Galatians, Paul listed those fruits of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. All of the marks of being filled with the Spirit. And I want to emphasize that being salt and light in its fullness, certainly as far as I understand from Jesus' teaching, encompasses both the proclamation of the gospel of Jesus and engaging in the work of service in establishing and demonstrating these characteristics of the kingdom. We heard what Jesus said. Salt's no good unless it's present where its flavour and its savour and the preservative that it is needed. Salt needs to permeate the fish and the meat to be a preservative. If it loses its flavour, Jesus said it's no good for anything. May as well be thrown out and trodden on. And what good is light if it can't shine, if it's covered up? Darkness pervades. Mission is about Christians being where darkness prevails and where the rot that destroys lives is taking hold. Affecting a life under the influence of Satan's evil intent for people who have got no way of breaking free. I want to say that our mission field, folks, as a church, is any place at all where the kingdom isn't. If you want a simple definition, that's mine. That's the mission field. Now, very importantly, what form mission activity takes is a unique calling from God for each individual person. And that varies across individuals and locations, involving both a general call that I believe we all have to share the gospel, and a specific personalised call very often to serve within a unique context that God reveals and calls us to. For some, this will mean travelling to different places overseas sometimes in dangerous situations, and for others it will be serving within our local community, importantly in our workplace and in the home. We have Nick and Cassie and Steve and Louisa as examples of people out, but we have so many. And in a little while, I'm just going to do a little trick rather than list all the ministries in this. It's not really a trick. Hopefully, it'll work. I just want to quote what John Stott said. John Stott said, "Mission is everything the church is sent in the world to do." Everything that the church is sent to do is mission. The idea of missionaries going overseas, that's one part of it. But our mission as a local church, our mission as Rivers Church is basically doing everything that we've been sent to do and trying to pull that off. Miles McPherson, an American Church of Christ preacher, he put it in an insightful way, which I really love. And you've got to sort of get the words here. He said, and I can't do his accent, he's from around the Los Angeles area, and he was a guy who played NFL football and was converted from being a drug addict as an NFL player and became a Christian pastor. And he said, the church is a body of believers who should be doing in the community what Jesus was doing when he was in his body. That's pretty good, isn't it? I love it. The church is a body of believers who should be doing in the community what Jesus was doing when he was in his body. How simple is that? I love it. So my point is simply one of encouraging us all, and I hope that's what it is. I'm not trying to say anything that I think you don't know already and that most of you are already engaged in, but I just want to encourage us all to be engaged in the mission that Jesus has called us to do and really be engaged. Being salt and light wherever we are, understanding that places of darkness pervade our communities and we have been saved for that purpose. Remember, what does it say in Ephesians? You were saved by grace through faith and that not of yourselves. And finishes up by saying, for the purpose of good works. And good works don't count as pluses in God's eyes because all good works come from God. That's the argument. That's that argument that Paul is putting. Now, what I want to do, just so we can see, and I don't care if it's everybody, but what I thought would be a good idea, if all those people who are engaged in some sort of mission in this church, and you can base it on what I've said or your own thing, to either stand up or put your hand up, because I'm sure there are people here who would love to get involved in mission and maybe don't know who to talk to or where to start. I heard a story of a guy who was a criminal fellow who was saved in a small coffee shop type environment, and the pastor said to him, well, now you've been converted, you really need to get involved in some sort of mission. And the guy said, well, I've been a criminal. He said, I'm a hardened criminal. I have no idea what it is I want to do. So he said, well, go down to there's a list of all the sorts of things we do in the church, the home groups and the help groups and the visiting groups and the food groups and all of that sort of stuff. And he said, okay, I'll do that. A couple of weeks later, we met him in the corridor. And the guy said, I joined one of your groups. And keep in mind, this is a really tough criminal guy, been in jail for years. And the pastor said to him, what have you chosen? He said, I'm knitting for berets for children with the old ladies group. Now, that's funny. It is true. But what I'm trying to emphasize is God calls people to all sorts of things to do. Some may be simple and you may not have any idea what impact that's having on that person's life, on their journey towards Christ. But believe me, that is what salt and light does. And every one of us can be involved in some way. So stand up or put your hand up so people know who you are if you're involved. Joe, Jeanette, I know, I don't want to call you out, just... There's adventurers, there's now I've got to make sure I don't insult Cindy again and call her about the ladies who walk around forests. Nature girls, yes, and so on. And not the least of which is community matters. And people involved in schools, in teaching, people involved in Sunday school, people involved in helping, visiting people, I'm sure every one of you could be standing if you really thought about the ministries that you have as part of this church. I just want to encourage you. And I want to say, let's just get on with it. Let's just realise that the power we have. I'll finish up because time is gone. I just want to finish up by reminding you what God said to Joshua. And God repeated to Joshua after Moses' death. You can read it in Joshua chapter 1. He repeated the same promise that he gave to Abraham. When he said, Joshua, you're to take these people across to the promised land. Everywhere the sole of your foot will touch, that have I given to you. Make sure you do all that I've commanded you to do. The word of the law won't pass out of your mouth, but you are to meditate on it night and day, and then you will have success, and I will be with you always. That's what Jesus said to us as we go out, as we work. But I want you to keep in mind, on a very serious note, what Paul told the Ephesians. He said, folks, our battle is not against flesh and blood. It's against the principalities, against the powers, against the demons, against the work of Satan, in people's houses, in schools, in hospitals, in people down the street, everywhere we go where Satan is there. And you need to put on that full armour of God in order to protect yourself when you're doing this. And God gives us that through the power of His Holy Spirit. And I'll finish with this. Keep in mind that in all those things that Paul says, the breastplate, the helmet, he finishes up, he says, and the sword of the Spirit, which is the Word of God. Meditate in the Word of God, Joshua, and then you will have sweet success. I'll leave you with that. Thanks. I hope that was an encouragement to you all.